You may have noticed yourself making decisions that don't quite feel like you anymore. You second-guess simple choices, react more emotionally than expected, or choose comfort and avoidance when you used to feel confident and decisive. Many women between 30 and 45 quietly blame stress, personality, or lack of focus. In reality, this shift is often hormonal. Hormones such as estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, insulin, and thyroid hormones directly influence how your brain evaluates risk, reward, safety, and effort. After 30, natural hormonal fluctuations combined with chronic stress and reduced recovery change how these signals are processed in the brain. In this video, you'll learn how hormones quietly shape your decisions, why this becomes more noticeable after 30, and how understanding this psychology can help you make choices with more clarity and confidence again. Estrogen and decision-making: why choices feel more emotional after 30. You may find yourself overthinking simple choices, feeling emotionally pulled in different directions, or regretting decisions almost immediately after making them. Situations that once felt neutral now feel personal. This doesn't mean you're becoming indecisive or too emotional. Very often, it's estrogen influencing how your brain weighs emotions and outcomes. How estrogen shapes decision psychology. Estrogen plays a powerful role in the brain areas responsible for emotion, reward, and evaluation. It affects how the brain uses neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which influence mood, motivation, and how strongly emotions are attached to thoughts. When estrogen is stable, decisions tend to feel balanced. You can consider options without feeling overwhelmed. Emotional input is present, but it doesn't dominate the process. When estrogen fluctuates, emotional signals become louder. The brain assigns more weight to feelings, tone, and perceived meaning, sometimes more than logic or past experience. This doesn't make decisions wrong. It makes them emotion-weighted. Why estrogen fluctuates. More after 30. After 30, estrogen doesn't simply decline. It becomes less predictable. Levels can rise and fall more sharply across the month, especially as ovulation becomes less consistent. These fluctuations directly affect the brain's emotional centers. On days when estrogen drops quickly, the brain may interpret situations as more stressful or uncertain. On days when it spikes, emotional sensitivity can increase. This creates a sense that your reactions and decisions vary from day to day. Stress and poor sleep make this instability stronger by interfering with how estrogen signals are received in the brain. How stress and sleep change estrogen-based decisions. High cortisol competes with estrogen in the brain. When stress is constant, estrogen's moderating influence weakens. Emotional reactions become quicker, and decisions may feel more urgent or charged. Sleep plays a similar role. Sleep deprivation disrupts estrogen receptor sensitivity in the brain, making emotional input harder to regulate the next day. This is why decisions made when you're tired often feel less grounded or more reactive. After 30, recovery from stress and poor sleep takes longer, which makes estrogen-related decision shifts more noticeable. What women often experience. When estrogen is influencing decisions more strongly, women commonly notice overthinking or replaying choices, emotional reasoning instead of clear prioritizing, feeling torn between options, regret or doubt after deciding, sensitivity to tone, feedback, or conflict, avoidance of decisions due to emotional fatigue. These experiences are hormonal responses, not loss of intelligence or confidence. Why this is often misread as a personality change. Because emotional decision-making doesn't show up on lab tests, women are often told they're stressed, anxious, or overreacting. The role of estrogen in decision psychology is rarely explained in simple terms. As a result, many women start questioning their judgment instead of recognizing a biological shift. Self-doubt increases, which further complicates decision-making. Doctor-approved ways to support estrogen-balanced decisions. Supporting estrogen's influence on decisions is about stability, not control. Helpful habits include consistent sleep schedules, regular meals to stabilize blood sugar, reducing chronic stress where possible, avoiding decision-making late at night, allowing time before major choices when emotions feel high. These supports help estrogen communicate more smoothly with the brain. Estrogen plays a key role in how emotionally weighted your decisions feel. After 30, natural fluctuations, amplified by stress and sleep disruption, can make choices feel heavier and more personal. This isn't a loss of judgment, it's a hormonal shift that responds best to stability, rest, and self-trust rather than self-criticism. Progesterone, the hormone that supports calm judgment and patience. You may notice that your tolerance is lower than it used to be. Small inconveniences feel bigger, you react faster, speak before thinking, or feel irritated by things you once handled calmly. This can feel unsettling, especially if you've always seen yourself as patient and level-headed. Often, this shift is linked to progesterone, the hormone that helps the brain pause, soften, and respond thoughtfully. How progesterone shapes calm decision-making. Progesterone has a quiet but powerful role in the brain. It supports GABA, a neurotransmitter that slows neural activity and promotes a sense of calm. GABA helps the brain create space between a trigger and a response. When progesterone is well supported, decisions feel less rushed. You're able to tolerate uncertainty, consider options, and respond rather than react. Emotions are still present, but they don't hijack the process. Progesterone acts like a buffer that keeps judgment steady under pressure. Why progesterone declines earlier than most women expect. Unlike estrogen, which can fluctuate for years, progesterone often begins declining earlier and more quietly, sometimes in the early to mid-30s. This is because progesterone is only produced after ovulation. As ovulation becomes less consistent with age, progesterone production drops. This creates a subtle imbalance where estrogen may still be present, but progesterone's calming influence is missing. Without this balance, the brain becomes more reactive, and decisions can feel emotionally charged or impulsive. How stress directly blocks progesterone. Stress has a direct impact on progesterone. When the body is under ongoing pressure, it prioritizes making cortisol over progesterone. The resources that would normally support progesterone production are redirected to manage stress instead. This means that even women who should be producing progesterone may not be doing so consistently. The result is a nervous system that feels constantly alert, making patience, thoughtful judgment, and emotional regulation harder to access. Decision patterns linked to low progesterone. When progesterone is low or inconsistent, women often experience reduced patience and tolerance, impulsive reactions or snap decisions, difficulty sitting with uncertainty, emotional overwhelm during conflict, trouble sleeping after stressful days, feeling wired but tired. These patterns are often misunderstood as personality changes or poor coping skills when they are actually hormonal signals. Why progesterone-related changes are often missed. Progesterone fluctuates throughout the menstrual cycle, and standard blood tests may not capture low levels accurately. Many women are told their hormones are normal, even while their nervous system feels anything but calm. Because progesterone's effects are subtle, its role in decision-making and emotional regulation is rarely discussed. This leaves many women blaming themselves for reactions that are biologically driven. Doctor-approved ways to support progesterone naturally. Supporting progesterone is less about adding pressure and more about removing stress signals. Helpful habits include prioritizing consistent restorative sleep, avoiding chronic overexertion, eating regularly to prevent blood sugar drops, choosing gentle movement over intense workouts, creating calm evening routines. These signals tell the body it's safe to ovulate and safe to produce progesterone. Progesterone plays a critical role in calm judgment, patience, and thoughtful decision-making. After 30, declining or blocked progesterone, often driven by stress, can make reactions feel faster and choices feel more impulsive. This isn't a loss of control or maturity. It's a hormonal shift that responds best to rest, consistency, and nervous system support, not self-blame. Cortisol and insulin: how stress hormones push you into survival decisions. You may notice that under pressure, your decisions change. You rush instead of reflect. You choose comfort over long-term benefit. You avoid decisions altogether because everything feels too heavy. This isn't weakness or poor discipline. Very often, it's cortisol and insulin quietly pushing your brain into survival mode. How cortisol rewires the brain for survival. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. Its job is to keep you safe during perceived threats. When cortisol rises, the brain shifts its priorities. Instead of thoughtful planning and long-term reasoning, the brain focuses on speed, urgency, and protection. In this state, the brain favors decisions that reduce discomfort quickly, avoid uncertainty, preserve energy, minimize perceived risk. This is helpful in emergencies. But when stress becomes chronic, cortisol keeps the brain in this survival pattern even when there is no real danger. Decisions become reactive instead of intentional. After 30, cortisol tends to rise more easily and stay elevated longer, especially when sleep and recovery are inconsistent. Insulin's role in decision energy. While cortisol sets the emotional tone, insulin influences mental energy. Insulin controls how glucose enters brain cells. The brain relies heavily on steady glucose to think clearly and regulate emotions. When insulin spikes and crashes, due to irregular meals, high stress, or poor sleep, the brain experiences temporary energy shortages. These dips feel like irritability, anxiety, brain fog, impatience, mental fatigue. When the brain feels underfueled, it seeks quick relief. This is why decision-making during low blood sugar often leans toward immediate comfort or avoidance, rather than thoughtful choice. Why this becomes more noticeable after 30. As women move through their 30s and early 40s, insulin sensitivity often declines slightly, especially under chronic stress. At the same time, cortisol becomes more reactive. This combination makes the brain less tolerant of hunger, fatigue, and emotional overload. Decisions that once felt easy now feel overwhelming. The brain is not failing, it's conserving energy and prioritizing safety. Modern life intensifies this pattern. Long workdays, emotional labor, skipped meals, and constant stimulation keep cortisol and insulin activated far more often than the brain was designed to handle. Behavior patterns driven by stress hormones. When cortisol and insulin dominate, women often notice making rushed decisions just to get it done, avoiding decisions that require effort, choosing short-term comfort over long-term goals, feeling mentally exhausted by choices, regretting decisions made while stressed, feeling emotionally reactive rather than intentional. These patterns are not character flaws. They are hormonal responses to perceived overload. Why this is often misunderstood. Because stress-driven decision changes don't appear on lab tests, they are often dismissed as anxiety, poor coping, or lack of discipline. The hormonal influence on behavior is rarely explained clearly. This leads many women to judge themselves harshly for choices made under stress, which only raises cortisol further and reinforces the cycle. Doctor-approved ways to support stress-driven decision-making. Supporting cortisol and insulin is about restoring rhythm and predictability, not forcing calm. Helpful support includes eating regular balanced meals, avoiding long periods without food, creating short recovery breaks during the day, protecting sleep consistency, reducing decision-making when exhausted. These signals tell the brain it's safe to slow down. Cortisol and insulin strongly influence how your brain makes decisions under stress. When these hormones stay elevated, the brain shifts into survival mode, prioritizing urgency and comfort over clarity. After 30, this effect becomes stronger, not because you're less capable, but because your hormones are asking for steadiness, nourishment, and recovery. Thyroid hormones and motivation. Why effort-based decisions feel harder. When you know what to do, but can't bring yourself to do it. You may understand your priorities clearly, yet still delay, avoid, or feel drained by decisions that require effort. Tasks feel heavier, motivation feels muted. You may wonder why planning, initiating, or following through feels harder than it used to. For many women after 30, this shift is closely connected to thyroid hormones and how they fuel the brain's motivation and decision centers. What thyroid hormones do for decision psychology. Thyroid hormones help regulate how much energy your brain cells can access. They influence mental drive, focus, planning, and the ability to initiate action. When thyroid signaling is strong, decisions that require effort, starting a task, making plans, thinking ahead, feel manageable. When thyroid signaling slows, the brain conserves energy. This doesn't stop thinking, but it changes how the brain prioritizes decisions. Tasks that once felt simple can suddenly feel overwhelming or not worth the effort. This shift often shows up as procrastination or avoidance, not because you don't care, but because your brain is protecting its limited energy. Why thyroid brain signaling changes. After 30. After 30, thyroid function doesn't always decline outright, but efficiency can drop. Stress, irregular eating, poor sleep, and hormonal fluctuations interfere with how thyroid hormones are converted and used inside brain cells. High cortisol plays a key role here. Chronic stress tells the body to conserve resources. One way the body does this is by dampening thyroid activity at the tissue level, including in the brain. Even when blood tests look normal, the brain may still feel underfueled. This is why motivation can drop quietly, without obvious medical red flags. How dieting, stress, and sleep affect motivation decisions. The brain constantly scans for energy availability. Skipping meals, undereating, or chronic dieting signal scarcity. In response, thyroid signaling slows to protect survival. Poor sleep adds another layer. Sleep is when thyroid receptors reset and brain energy systems rebalance. Without consistent restorative sleep, thyroid signals don't land as clearly the next day. Decisions that require focus or effort then feel harder to initiate. Over time, this combination teaches the brain to avoid effort. Heavy decisions, even when they're important. Decision patterns linked to low thyroid support. When thyroid brain energy is reduced, women often notice low motivation or drive, procrastination despite clear goals, difficulty starting tasks, mental fatigue early in the day, feeling emotionally flat or disconnected, avoiding decisions that require planning. These patterns are frequently mistaken for laziness or burnout when they are actually hormonal energy signals. Why thyroid-related decision changes are often missed. Standard thyroid tests measure hormone levels in the blood, not how effectively the brain is using them. Because of this, many women are told their thyroid is fine, even while motivation and mental energy are low. The connection between stress, lifestyle, and thyroid-driven motivation is rarely explained in everyday language. As a result, women often judge themselves harshly instead of recognizing what their hormones are communicating. Doctor-approved ways to support thyroid-driven motivation. Supporting thyroid influence on decisions is not about pushing harder. It's about restoring fuel and safety. Helpful support includes eating regularly and avoiding extreme restriction, prioritizing sleep consistency, reducing chronic stress where possible, choosing gentle, steady movement, allowing recovery instead of constant output. These signals help thyroid hormones support the brain more effectively. Thyroid hormones quietly influence motivation, focus, and effort-based decisions. After 30, stress, poor sleep, and underfueling can reduce how clearly the brain receives thyroid signals. When motivation drops, it's not a lack of willpower, It's your body conserving energy. With steady nourishment, rest, and support, decision-making drive can return naturally without force. Your daily hormone-friendly decision. Reset routine. Understanding that hormones influence your decisions is powerful, but clarity improves most when your day sends calmer signals to your brain. This routine is not about controlling your thoughts. It's about creating conditions where your hormones can support clear, steady decision-making instead of pushing you into reaction or avoidance. Morning, create mental stability. Before decisions begin, how you start your morning shapes cortisol and insulin, which strongly affect decision clarity. Rushed mornings, skipped meals, and immediate screen exposure push the brain into urgency before the day has even begun. A more supportive start includes waking at a consistent time, eating something nourishing within the first hour, and giving your brain a short buffer before demands begin. This helps cortisol rise and fall naturally instead of spiking, and it gives insulin a steady rhythm. Many women notice fewer impulsive choices and less emotional reactivity when mornings feel predictable rather than chaotic. Midday, protect energy. So decisions don't feel heavy. As the day progresses, decision fatigue often builds. This is usually not mental weakness, but declining brain energy linked to insulin and thyroid hormones. Regular meals prevent blood sugar dips that make decisions feel overwhelming or urgent. Brief pauses between tasks help cortisol reset. Slowing decision-making when energy dips instead of forcing productivity keeps reactions calmer and choices more intentional. This is also a good time to delay non-urgent decisions. Giving your brain space often leads to clearer judgment later. Afternoon, reduce pressure, not output. Afternoons are when stress hormones often rise again. Instead of pushing harder, small resets help maintain clarity. Gentle movement, stepping outside, or quiet moments away from stimulation help cortisol settle. These signals support estrogen and progesterone balance, which influence emotional weighting and patience in decision-making. This is not wasted time. It's hormonal maintenance that prevents impulsive or regret-driven choices later in the day. Evening signal safety to calm decision centers. Evenings are when emotional sensitivity can increase, especially as progesterone drops. Late-night decision-making often feels harder or more emotional for this reason. Dimming lights, reducing stimulation, and creating consistent evening routines tell the nervous system the day is winding down. This supports calmer thinking and prepares the brain for restorative sleep. Avoiding heavy decisions at night protects clarity and prevents unnecessary stress responses. Sleep where decision clarity is restored. Sleep is when hormone receptors reset and brain chemistry stabilizes. Inconsistent sleep keeps cortisol elevated and decision centers reactive the next day. Protecting sleep timing and quality is one of the most effective ways to support clear thinking after 30. Your daily rhythm strongly influences how your hormones shape decisions. When mornings are steady, days are nourished, evenings are calm, and sleep is protected, cortisol settles, insulin stabilizes, and thoughtful decision-making becomes easier again without force or self-criticism. Conclusion. If you've been questioning your decisions or wondering why choices feel heavier than they used to, it's important to know this. You're not losing your judgment. Your hormones are constantly influencing how your brain evaluates risk, effort, comfort, and emotion, especially after 30. When estrogen fluctuates, progesterone declines, cortisol stays elevated, or insulin becomes unstable, decision-making can shift without you realizing why. These changes are not personal flaws or signs of weakness. They are biological signals asking for steadier rhythms, better recovery, and gentler support. When you understand the hormonal psychology behind your choices, self-doubt begins to fade and clarity becomes easier to access. Small daily habits create powerful hormonal shifts. When you support your body instead of fighting it, hormones begin to rebalance naturally. Educational only, not medical advice. Like, subscribe, and share this video with a woman who needs this understanding today. Thank you for watching, and thank you for giving yourself the compassion your hormones deserve.